Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked where I climb the online VGC 20 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. In the last episode of Road to Ranked, we used this really fun team featuring Cobalion on Road and Wash, so I'll be playing a couple more games with it today. Once again, you can learn more about the team in the description below. It is a rental code, and there is a paste as well. So let's just jump right into today's episode. We're obviously just a week away from Series 6, so that should be super exciting. So yeah, just going to close that Series 5 with some fun teams, some fun games, and then we're going to be jumping into a brand new series, and I think that'll really shake things up. So pretty excited for that. But for the first game of today's episode, we're going up against what really feels like kind of a more early meta team. There's Duraludon, Arcanine, Gyarados, Tyranitar, Grimmsnarl, and Amoonguss. So, let's see. I think Duraludon's a really big problem for this team in general because of the, ability to ignore the redirection, so it can really dunk on Dragon Ball and Rotom, which doesn't bode super well for us, so probably want to maybe prioritize Cobalion a little bit more. If we could get a Swords Dance off with it, could be really good. The only thing it has to watch out for potentially is going to be the Gyarados. But I think, honestly, leading Cobalion doesn't seem bad. I kind of want Rotom Wash in the back, and the question is whether I want both Clefairy and Indeedee. Probably not. I think Indeedee is probably a must-bring to give myself the seed boost. But I like leading Incineroar with Cobalion and then Indeedee and Rotom in the back. Mainly because Incineroar here has the Intimidate into a lot of my opponent's Pokemon. We also have Fake Out earlier on. So, yeah, let's just jump into today's episode. As always, if you guys enjoy, please show support by leaving a like in the video. I'd really appreciate it. And question of the day, with Series 6 coming up soon, I want to know what you think we should try out on this channel. And also, what do you plan on using in Series 6? Let me know in the comments below. I think it's definitely going to be, exciting to try out this metagame where a lot of the Pokemon that we're used to seeing aren't around anymore. So, it's me, Grimmsnarl and Duraludon. Okay, I think this is not bad for us. I mean, the Intimidate's pretty useless, but I can turn one, just switch Incineroar out into Indeedee and go for a Swords Dance. That doesn't seem half bad. I mean, I think it's likely my opponent Worm wins into Incineroar, though, so I could also just, because, Duraludon's not putting that much pressure against Cobalion, right? So I could just Swords Dance Fake Out Grimmsnarl here. That's also a play. We have options here for sure. I definitely want a Swords Dance here, though, with Cobalion. I think that much is for sure. The Fake Out just ensures that I get the Swords Dance off. Yeah, I think, Indeedee is actually more valuable offensively, given what my opponent potentially has in the bag. So it's going to be a Duraludon switch out. Maybe Gyarados? Ooh, Amoonguss. Okay. Yeah, this works out pretty nicely for us. We get a free Swords Dance off. Question is whether I want to gamble a little bit and go for a second Swords Dance, because what we can do this next turn is just go Max Steel Spike Flare Blitz into Amoonguss. It's a pretty obvious play, but otherwise I might get put to sleep, and we don't want that. Not Flare Blitz, excuse me, Burning Jealousy, but I think that should still be a KO. So, yep, let's go for Max Steel Spike and Burning Jealousy here. No switches, so one play my opponent could make is, for example, Reflect, Protect. That's probably the worst case scenario. But even if that happens, I think the fact that Cobalion gets the Swords Dance off for free in this game is really good. I definitely want to play with all the Swords of Justice a little bit more in the next series as well, so I'm excited to give that a shot. So let's see. Okay, Amoonguss doesn't protect, so I would think Steel Spike and Burning Jealousy KO, but if not, we could be in some trouble, because then that would be a Spore probably going out into the Cobalion slot. I actually think it's going to survive. Wow, that is impressive bulk there. If we had Flare Blitz, maybe we'd pick up the knockout. But without Flare Blitz, I actually think we're probably going to get put to sleep here, unfortunately. Because, of course, Burning Jealousy is spread as well. So mainly used, yeah, not able to pick up the knockout there. And Spore goes out into Cobalion. So that's not great. The only way I could have gotten around that is maybe protect Cobalion, go for a Parting Shot. I mean, my opponent's not exerting any offensive pressure, but I'm definitely going to waste one turn of my Dynamax and potentially the next two turns. So that was nicely done on their end. However, I think regular Cobalion is still really good against my opponent's entire team. So I'm just going to go for another Burning Jealousy and Steel Spike here. Obviously, whatever I do with Cobalion is pretty useless. I think Amoonguss might want to consider switching out. So this is one of the downsides of running Burning Jealousy over something like Flare Blitz. Obviously, Flare Blitz is meant more for damage, whereas Burning Jealousy is used more for disruption here. So you can see how bulky Amoonguss is, especially with Reflect. Wouldn't be surprised if it was like bold, max HP, max defense here, but I actually still think we're in an okay spot. Grimmsnarl's never putting on much offensive pressure. Amoonguss is actually going to switch out, so maybe going back out into Duraludon. It's actually Tyranitar is the last one, which means my opponent is super Cobalion weak, right? Like, I have a defense boost on it as well. Could have considered maybe a parting shot here instead to cycle out, but I don't mind going for a Burning Jealousy either. I mean, if we get a one-turn Wake here with Cobalion, I think my opponent just loses instantly. But even if they manage to... I mean, here, like, what do you even do? Spirit Break into Incineroar is not going to do very much. So I'll probably want to Hard Switch out this next turn. Just so I don't eat up a Rock Slide. Oh, we have the defense boost, actually, so we should survive an attack from Tyranitar. However, obviously, Tyranitar could, like, go for Rockfall. And this is where having Goggles in DD is really valuable. I didn't think about prioritizing that as much. So what I actually should have done turn 2 in this game was Protect Cobalion, Parting Shot into the Amoonguss slot. Or actually into Grimmsnarl, because Amoonguss can protect there, go out into Indeedee, and then Cobalion cleanly sweeps this. So I played a little carelessly here, but I think it's still okay. I'm just going to go for a Steel Spike here onto the Grimmsnarl, and Parting Shot onto Tyranitar. Yes, Tyranitar is going to commit the max. What makes this interesting is that my Indeedee is really useless against Grimmsnarl and Tyranitar, but it'll be still decently valuable against Amoonguss in the back, right? Rotom is pretty good against what my opponent's brought as well, but because I had Goggles Indeedee, I think we had a pretty easy play to make. I forgot that we were Goggles, honestly. But I think this is still okay. Oh, we actually managed to wake up with Cobalion, which is really fortunate, so we get the +2 Steel Spike off. I think this KOs through Reflect. Yep. That puts us in a phenomenal spot, honestly. But like I said, I didn't need to gamble it on sleep turns here if I just played smarter when Amoonguss came in turn 2. There's no, like, because, like, Protect and Parting Shot is super safe because we're always faster. And we're actually faster than Tyranitar here, too. So now I've got +2 defense on the Cobalion. Tyranitar's at -1 attack. I can switch Incineroar out and back in for another Intimidate, which is really good as well. I think we could just go out into Indeedee here, honestly. Actually, let me think. You probably Rockfall into that slot. I think going out into Indeedee is fine. Yeah, mainly because Rotom is more valuable for damage in this late game. But this was like, Cobalion like 1v4'd my opponent's team here, especially with Goggles Indeedee, so I should have just played smarter with that. Either way, though, we're in a pretty good position right now, mainly because like Grimmsnarl and Amoonguss are super passive, so they don't really do any damage at all. So like you're putting all your eggs in the Tyranitar plus Duraludon basket. So now our Cobalion's at +2 attack, +2 defense, +1 special defense, and it's actually gonna be max Knuckle coming out, which makes sense for a total of 34 damage. Oh my goodness. Okay, nice. So we are in a really good spot right now. I mean, I can even just this next turn go for, I think, Safeguard. Well, we'll see what comes in. If Amoonguss comes out, I think it's definitely going to be Safeguard Swords Dance, but it's going to be Duraludon instead. I think I still want to Safeguard. Double Protecting this turn also makes some sense. I've got Follow Me. Expanding Force isn't going to do much. I mean, I definitely want to switch back out into Incineroar for another Intimidate, but I don't know if Close Combat's KOing. If you're my opponent, I would think you want to max Knuckle. Cobalion's the main win con at this point. Could also get greedy and go for another Swords. I just don't know if Close Combat KOs Tyranitar with Reflect being up. We are at +2, though. I'm going to play safe. I'm going to protect the Cobalion here and switch out into Incineroar. It makes the next turn a little bit awkward, because... Actually, not really, because Incineroar's faster than Tyranitar. So because we're faster, that's actually really valuable. Because, like, we can just Parting Shot and switch out before you go for a Rockfall. It means I don't have to manually switch. Okay. Cobalion protects. Let's see. Okay, it's actually a Body Press coming out, so I'm glad I protected there. And a Knuckle, yeah. So that's why it's not good to get greedy and just try to attack with Cobalion there. The Tyranitar's at neutral. Body Press doesn't scare me that much. Once we get a Safeguard up, Rotom should win easily against Tyranitar. I don't know my calc into the... My Cobalion calc super well with Reflect being up, which is why I'm like playing a little bit more hesitant. see, you can close combat Tyranitar now. You're gonna body press, probably body press Knuckle into Cobalion again. I don't even think that KOs, to be honest. And then I can Burning Jealousy here, right? Because then I'll get the burn. Oh no, but I'm faster than Tyranitar, so I should probably Parting Shot. Yeah. Because if Close Combat doesn't knock out, it would activate a potential... I actually don't think Close Combat knocks out here, to be honest. But if we KO Tyranitar, then Indeedee has a pretty good time in this game. Tyranitar actually max guards, which is fine by me, because now you can't go for... Like, now you don't have the max, so Close Combat will definitely KO. This Duraludon is... Or I guess this Incineroar is fast, but Duraludon being slower than us here is really surprising. There's going to be another body press, and actually into the Incineroar slot, so not targeting the Cobalion, which I feel like is the main threat right now, so, I mean, I'll take that. That actually procs our Berry as well, so now we're in really good shape, I think, because... What I can do this next turn is just double up into Tyranitar with a Close Combat and a Burning Jealousy. If you switch in the Amoonguss, that's going to be a knockout. If you stay in with Tyranitar, Close Combat's just going to knock you out. Burning Jealousy gets redirected into Duraludon. So, yeah, my opponent had nothing for Cobalion this game. Like, Grimmsnarl doesn't do any damage to it, Amoonguss doesn't do any damage to it, Duraludon can't really max against it, which is why my opponent kind of felt forced to switch out in the early game. And then you're left with Tyranitar, and the only thing Tyranitar can do is max Knuckle. So, yeah, it's going to switch out here, but that's fine. With Regenerator, no, I still think it would faint to Close Combat plus Burning Jealousy, but let's see. I think it'll actually survive. I could have gone for Iron Head there, just to secure the knockout, but I wasn't sure that was KOing the Tyranitar, but our Incineroar being faster here is really, really valuable. Yeah, okay, Amoonguss will faint after Sand, it looks like. There's Body Press. But this Cobalion is just so tanky after the Steel Spike boosts, which is real nice. Although Sand does subside, so Amoonguss lives to see another day. But that's fine. Yeah, 2 turns of Reflect left, so it was Light Clay. Should be AV on Duraludon. I think we can just Close Combat into the Duraludon slot now and Burning Jealousy. Us having faster Incineroar here is really, really nice. Surprised to see Tyranitar and Duraludon be as slow as they are, but we take those. So it's like, if you're running Body Press, you're almost always Assault Vest, I think, because you always want Steel Spike, or a Steel type attack, a Dragon type attack, Protect, and then probably like one of Dark Pulse or Thunderbolt. I guess you could run Body Press over Dark Pulse or Thunderbolt, but I feel like the other two have more value. So like, normally you're only running Body Press on Assault Vest sets. Either way, though, there's just not much my opponent can do, right? Like, you can't switch Duraludon out into Tyranitar, because then that activates the Sand, so Amoonguss probably switches back out. The only way this works out is if Duraludon actually does have Protect. Even if it does, though, you know, I've still got Indeedee and Rotom in the back. I guess the one thing I have to watch out for is, like, actually dealing with Tyranitar in the late game, because my Indeedee can't touch it. But, yeah, no Protect from Duraludon here. Close Combat one-shots it. Perfect. So you can see the value of non-beat-up Cobalion strats, right? Like, the Swords Dance is nice, plus... you know, Assault Vest is my favorite item on Cobalion, but being able to Protect actually has a lot of value, although, you know, I didn't really make full use of it in this game, but... definitely could have done some cool stuff with it, especially because we had the Indeedee. Like, all I needed to do to, like, win this pretty much on turn 2 of the game was, Parting Shot, Protect. Go out into Indeedee, that soaks up any spores, even, you're gonna spawn into the Cobalion slot most of the time there. Okay, so Amoonguss comes out. I'm at neutral, so I do want to be a little bit careful right now. It's one more turn of Reflect. Yeah, I mean, my opponent's not going to have enough firepower to close out this one, I think. It's just whether like, they go for the super gamble play here. Honestly, I think just Close Combat and Burning Jealousy is fine here, considering that I have Rotom in the back. Like, if Amoonguss Rage Powders... Okay, it doesn't Rage Powder. Even if Burning Jealousy doesn't KO Amoonguss, like, that's fine, right? You're going to get the Spore off, but then it's going to be a 4v1. I can Psycho and Incineroar for further Intimidate, so this should be a win. But, yeah, Flare Blitz Incineroar would have made my life a little easier in this game as well. Yeah, Amoonguss hangs on, gets the Spore off into Cobalion, but... There's no way Tyranitar can beat every Pokemon, right? Like, you know, if you want to knock out Cobalion, you pretty much are forced to superpower it. Cobalion walls Tyranitar pretty nicely, actually. And once again, since we're faster than Tyranitar, all I have to do here is just click Parting Shot, get the Intimidate off, keep cycling in, and then Rotom can just, you know, Nasty Plot in front of it. Reflect is finally over as well. The only calc I'm curious about here is whether +2 Close Combat would have knocked out Tyranitar when Dynamaxed with Reflect being up. I actually think it survives, but maybe I'm giving Tyranitar too much credit here. either way, safe departing shot here, and just go out into NDD. Once NDD is out, yeah, I mean, the scary thing is, I guess, theoretically, like, we could miss Hydro Pumps, and, like, we could get crit here, but, I don't really think there's much my opponent can do, to be honest. Yeah, we go out into NDD instead of Rotom, just because NDD isn't going to do any damage against Tyranitar. So we don't want to, like, switch in Rotom and get crit, right? When you're in these late game positions, you just want to avoid any potential variance and just get the free switch it into whatever your main sweeper is going to be. And of course, if my opponent's superpowers, then they're just decreasing their attack further, which means the Rotom is going to be completely protected in this late game. But they opt for Rock Slide, which is even better for us. So I do think that's probably the correct play, to be honest. So I'm just going to click Close Combat, switch Indy back out into Incineroar here. I don't even think -2 Rock Slide KOs the Incineroar. Even if it does, I finally just bring in Rotom. And, like, my opponent has to KO Cobalion, right? As soon as this wakes up, Close Combat just knocks it out. So this game's dragging on for a little bit, but that's just because we're playing against Reflect. I think my opponents made the right switches, and I think in the end, it was just kind of a team preview win for us, where their answer against Cobalion and their win con is basically to hope for max turn sleep. But I had an easy way around that, so I didn't play perfectly because I had the NDD waiting in the back. Super Mario actually does manage to knock out Cobalion because it manages to crit. Okay. But that's why we switch out into the NDD there, right? So it's like, even if the worst case happens every turn, this is still okay, because now what I can do is go out into Rotom. And this does get a little bit scarier, but the way around this is basically, because, like, you could crit, I don't even think a crit crunch knocks out Rotom, to be honest. They needed that crit to knock out the Cobalion for sure, I think. But now they're at -3 attack already, so yeah, we can just go for Protect, Parting Shot. The reason I'm playing this so safe is because Incineroar and NDD don't have any damage against Tyranitar, so I actually need to make sure that I don't get both of my Pokemon crit, and they were able to crit the Cobalion already, which is bad, right? So even though it's a 4v1, we could potentially lose to, like, max roll crit crunch onto Rotom. A crit Rock Slide won't knock us out, so now I can just bring in NDD. So I don't know, this is dragging on really, really long, but I do have to play a little bit safer here, just because a crit onto Rotom would actually mean we lose, because my opponent managed to get that crit on Cobalion. Looks like it's actually Lash Out Tar, okay. So now we should win, because Sand is gone, so all I have to do is click Nasty Plot, follow me, and then just Thunderbolt twice for the win. So kind of a long endgame. It didn't really need to be this complicated, to be honest, but the crit on Cobalion made things a little tricky. Obviously, I could have just knocked down Amoonguss with an Iron Head Burning Jealousy, but it was still possible. Like, it's better to make the safest plays in these positions, right? If I doubled up into Amoonguss and it protected, Tyranitar crits me, that's pretty bad. Lash Out does a total of... Not for a knockout, actually, impressively. Another crit! I mean, this is just validating my decision to play it safely here, right? Like, this is why you go for the follow me's and put yourself in these positions. Because that crit one onto Rotom actually could have been really bad. Yeah. I don't want to risk the Hydro Pump miss. Thunderbolt should be a 2-hit KO. So, let me just Thunderbolt here. And Burning Jealousy. But yeah, this is why you gotta play safe. We end up beating 2 crits in on 2 critical Pokemon. Actually, I think Burning Jealousy should be a 2-hit KO here too. So I don't think my opponent has any way to win, because even if you... is that a 2-hit KO on Tyranitar? Not sure. They do correctly go for Lash Out onto Rotom. They need the crit onto Rotom here. But no crit. Yeah. Even if it crit, I'm not sure it was enough for a KO. But this ends up being a lot longer than it needed to be. I think Burning Jealousy looked like it was a 2-hit KO there, so even if you crit Rotom, we had the game 100% won. But like I said, games like this can slip out of control if you don't manage... You have to, like, account for any potential critical hits, right, in the late game. So that ends up dragging out for a lot longer than it needed to be. I think I could have played a lot better. Like, all I needed to do was bring in NDD in the early game, make sure Cobalion doesn't get put to sleep, get a safeguard up, and then it's just game over instantly. Especially because if you have Grimmsnarl and Amoonguss out and I get safeguard, I get a second Swords Dance off, and then Cobalion at +4 should just sweep my opponent's entire team. So, yeah, not really too happy about how I played that. But if anything, I think let that end... Like, it might be boring to drag out your games a little bit in the end, but you should always just, like, make sure you set yourself up to, even if you get crit on... Like, assume that you get crit on every single attack, right? Basically, and try to play around that. Obviously, if Cobalion didn't get crit, game would have ended a lot earlier. But you know, you just gotta play as safely as possible, because you will have those games where like occasionally you don't think about what the worst case scenario is, and your opponent kind of just sweeps you afterwards. And those are really like tilting games to lose, because you know they need to go for the right win cons in those positions. This is a really interesting next team. Comfy Blastoise. So it's obviously like self Giga Drain into G-Max weakness policy. Corviknight, Amoonguss, Dracozolt, which is a really good core you should expect to see actually going into Series 6. This is actually it is a Series 6 team. Yeah, they're using a Series 6 team, which is pretty cool. Okay. Comfy Blastoise. Rotom looks good. We haven't really gone with Dragapult at all with this team, and I feel like D-Dance Pult is not bad here. I should utilize Amoonguss more. I didn't really use that very well in the last game. I don't know. Amoonguss, Dragapult. I think Rotom is a must-bring. Could potentially even max it. Cobalion doesn't look great here. Most of my opponent's Pokemon resist it. I guess the only thing it really provides value for is against the Comfy. And I think Clefairy for Friend Guard is valuable here. Intimidate from Incineroar could be pretty good into the Dracozolt as well. But, yeah. That last game reminds me of that endgame we had against, like, the Porygon 2 a while ago, where we kind of just had to, like, just play it a little bit safer. Yeah. Like, if we, like, miss a Hydro Pump and we get crit, that's bad. I don't know if a crit Lash Out knocks out Rotom, though. That's the main question. If it doesn't even KO, then I could have just attacked a little bit faster, but I didn't know that cow because I wanted to play safer. This is actually a fantastic lead for us, I think. Yeah, this is pretty good. Do you max Wormwind turn 1 here? And if so, is that a one-shot into Indeedee? Because I have a bunch of options here. I mean, I can switch Indeedee out into Clefairy. I'd like to Safeguard more than anything. Safeguard, Dragon Dance. Well, that's really aggressive if my opponent Wormwinds. You know what's actually a pretty interesting play? Actually, yeah, Safeguard and then switch Dragapult out into Clefairy. Because this is really passive, but if I get Safeguard off, the Amoonguss is absolutely useless in the subsequent turns. And Dracozolt, I think, is almost always going to Dynamax in this position. So, it means that I, burn a turn of my opponent's max, and I set myself up for a late game Dragapult sweep. And if my opponent Wormwinds into the Dragapult slot, it's a disaster for them. They should target Indeedee here, but with Friend Guard, we should survive. Dracozolt actually switches out, though. Okay, maybe into Corviknight? That looks like it. Yep. That's fine by me. Because we get Safeguard up, which means Amoonguss is in a really tough spot now. It has to pretty much switch out. Yeah. Perfect. So that was going into the Dragapult slot. So now I can just go for an Expanding Force and go out into Rotom, I think. We might even consider maxing Rotom now. But this is pretty good because normally what Corviknight wants to do is go for Iron Defense or Bulk Up, and that's pretty problematic if we're using Dragapult, but Rotom is not going to care about its boosts at all, and I can just Thunderbolt it cleanly, right? So I think that's a good switch from my opponent turn 1, to play a little bit more passively, but we actually end up, I think, in a better spot after that, so Amoonguss protects, but that's fine. Like, Corviknight maybe goes for Tailwind, maybe just goes for a Body Press. Like, I get a little bit of chip damage with Expanding Force here, which is nice as well. And now it's like my opponent has to switch something into Psychic Terrain, boosted Expanding Force this subsequent turn, which is definitely going to hurt. And they go for Bulk Up. Yeah, like, that's not really too scary, right? Because here I can just go for Expanding Force again. It's lefty is interesting. Actually, instead of Expanding Forcing here, I think I want to Follow Me and Nasty Plot. Because I do think you probably Spore into the Indeedee slot here. So if I Nasty Plot here, then the following turn, Expanding Force... Well, actually, Expanding Force T-Bolt might have just been a knockout onto Amoonguss here either way. Yeah, they're going to switch out Amoonguss, so I could have gone for the Expanding Force here. Although the Follow Me protects me well, and it's Marowak as the last one, so I'm glad I didn't Thunderbolt there. Because this puts Dynamax Rotom in a really good spot, I think, in the late game. Yeah. And I can... Now it's like, if my opponent maxes Zolt, like, the Dragapult's still going to really hurt that. So Corv just goes for another Bulk Up, which makes sense. But I think now what we can do is go for Max Rotom. Definitely click Expanding Force here with NDD. And just Geyser into Corviknight. Now, Corviknight might go for a Dynamax of its own. I do think if it maxes +2, like, Corviknight just gets walled by Rotom so much. So I guess the scariest outcome here is maybe... Marowak Max Phantasm won't KO us either. And, like, Corviknight's not going to have Protect if it's Bulk Up, right? It's gonna have Bulk Up Roost, and then 2 of Brave Bird, Iron Head, and Body Press. So in order to protect you, you pretty much have to max. So this is why I wanted to prioritize Rotom a little bit more here. It's, you're going to go up against a lot of Corviknight in Series 6, I think. And if you want to counter it, you should use Rotom Wash. That's one of the best counters. So Marowak switches out, maybe back out into a Mungus. Actually, in a Dracozolt to maybe take a Geyser, which makes a lot of sense. So, let's see. I think either way, we're exerting a lot of pressure right now. This Rotom's been really impressive, honestly. And this team supports it nicely, too, where it's like, I think a lot of people weren't even expecting Rotom to be super good in Series 5, and we've obviously seen it see, you know, less usage, but it's still a really good Pokemon, especially with nasty plot setups. But yeah, they're going to commit the max. I like the decision to switch out into Dracozolt, because, like, you know, Marowak's pretty useless in this spot. The scary thing is we're playing around Dracozolt potentially hitting, like, Hustle attacks now. If I max Lightning there into the Corviknight, it's just instantly game over. But I do have to, I think, respect the option of Marowak staying in and going for just, like, a Poltergeist or a Shadow Bone. Geyser should still be a 2-hit KO, especially after getting the Rain up. Although I think it's likely Corviknight maybe goes for an Airstream here, which will give it a speed boost. Was that a crit, or is it just that strong? That was a crit. Okay, well, that's just going to end the game instantly, unfortunately, for my opponent. Yeah. Definitely an unfortunate crit, but I still think we were honestly in really good shape even without the crit, because at best, you probably Airstream to KO NDD, but then I just bring in Clefairy, and then the following turn I can just protect Max Geyser again. There's not much my opponent can do against that, but that was definitely obviously a favorable crit for us. However, I think Rotom just kind of beat everything with the Safeguard support. And actually, because I had Safeguard up, the turn in which I went for Follow Me Nasty Plot, no, I still think that was a pretty safe play, actually, so I don't regret that. Yeah, I'm just going to Expanding Force now, and Geyser. I think Expanding Force, yeah, alone just wins the battle. My opponent just forfeits, so... Complete opposite of that last match where we had to play around the crits. But this is kind of the downside of using these, like, setup strats with Corviknight. You know, a single crit really messes you up. This kind of actually happened in the Players' Cup Finals this last weekend. I don't know if you tuned into it. If not, you can watch it on Pokemon's YouTube channel. But we saw a lot of Ferrothorns, a lot of Corviknights, and a fair amount of games actually ended up coming down to a critical hit happening onto, like, this big setup Pokemon. And so you do have to watch out for, you know, using those kind of strategies. All right, last game of the day. Very hyper-offensive team. Super offensive. It's obviously, you know, like Tailwind setups here, which are super scary. I have to be wary of leading the Incineroar. The NDD can go for Imprison to stop my NDD, which could be problematic. I mean, the first question is, how do I just stop something like Whimsicott Cinderace? Because that looks pretty scary. I want to lead Incineroar. The only problem is if my opponent just calls me out and leads like Whimsicott Braviary, that's super bad. So I'll probably want to bring Incineroar, but have it in the back. This is tricky. I don't think Cobalion's great here, unfortunately. As much as I love it, it just doesn't do enough damage, and the special defense boost doesn't really help me either. So I'm thinking of something like Dragapult Clefairy with Incineroar. In the back. It's just that NDD Expanding Forces actually do a lot against my opponent's team, but how easily can I actually get them off? I'm not sure. And Rotom is the last one, I think. This is a pretty tough one, because I think, like, speed is really important for this team. You know, the idea is you want to get a boost up and then sweep, but I don't know how easy it will be to get a boost up, and unfortunately... You know, like, normally Dragapult, if it gets a Dragon Dance off, will just be able to sweep through. But in this matchup, like, my opponent's team is pretty fast. And after Tailwind, even with a Dragon Dance, I'm not going to be outspeeding a lot of my opponent's Pokemon. I think there are a lot of different modes we could have gone with here. So, let's see. It's going to be Cinderace NDD. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can Dragon Dance here, which is nice. I can even max the Dragapult immediately. The other question is, are you going to be sashed on the Indeedee? I think it's pretty likely it will be, which is bad. So I want to switch, like, Dragapult out into Incineroar turn 1 to get an Intimidate. I think it's, like, decently likely my opponent maybe considers Steel Spiking, but they could also just max Darkness in a Dragapult if it has Sucker Punch, which could be bad. Going for a Dragon Dance would be super greedy here, so I don't want to go for that. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for Wormwind into Indeedee, switch Clefairy out into Incineroar, because what this accomplishes is I get the Intimidate immediately against Cinderace, I also get the max Wormwind off, so it's going to be at -2 attack. So even if you Expanding Force max Darkness here, I actually think the Dragapult survives, which is good news for us. But I guess I'd actually probably rather see this than the Whimsicott lead, so we'll take it. Yeah. I'm wondering if I should have... Wormwinding into Cinderace might have been the correct play, though. Cobalion was never going to do much for us, especially against this lead, so I don't think that would have been the answer. I do think we could have maybe brought our own Indeedee, but once again, like, if you're running male Indeedee, you definitely have Imprison as one... Imprison and Expanding Force as 2 of your moves, right? So, like, that's just going to shut down my Indeedee. Safeguard doesn't provide us any value here because there's no Amoonguss. So, yeah. The Safeguard Goggles Indeedee is a really cool set, though. Like, I think I should have taken more advantage of that in the first game. And it's actually a really nice way to counter Amoonguss. So, you know, even though we're not playing Series 6 yet, like, you can consider that as a counter for Amoonguss in the next set. If it's not Sashed Indeedee, this is also great, but I think it will be Sashed, yeah. So that was to be expected. A little unfortunate, but it's fine. Wonder if they actually Airstream here. Like, I was considering going for an Airstream, but I really wanted the attack decrease on the Cinderace, especially if Steel's or Darkness comes out. Yep, there's Max Darkness. Okay. Well, I don't think this plus Expanding Force KOs, but let's see. Oh, yeah, we take that. Nice. Okay, we should survive Expanding Force here, too, I would think. Because it's not like Life Orb or Specs. Yep. There is the Life Orb. There's the Expanding Force. That was all to plan. Wow, Dragapult almost faints there, though. That was really close. Okay. Oh, I didn't realize this was max speed Incineroar. That is really interesting. That also explains why we were so fast earlier on. Because one play I could make here is actually Airstream. No, I don't think that really makes much sense. Well, Cinderace could also max... Do I think it has max guard? Probably not. Probably not. So, like, what I'm thinking is Airstream. I could actually Airstream go out into Rotom to give Rotom the speed boost. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to Airstream into the Indeedee. Yeah, and go out into Rotom for the speed boost. Okay, Indeedee switches out. Into Whimsicott, okay. Nice. I mean, the problem is that Tailwind will go up here, and my opponent will probably just knock out the Dragapult, but I think that's fine. They might even Max Guard Cinderace if they have it, but it doesn't look like it. And it's Koba Whimsicott, wow. Well, that makes sense, because the Sash is on the Indeedee. Close to picking up a knockout. Maybe Airstream Burning Jealousy would have been better. I gotta use Burning Jealousy more, too, because I forget it's spread damage. I was thinking, like, I have to Snarl there, but... Dragapult hangs out with 1 HP, though, and it's actually Knuckle coming out, going into the Rotom slot. Okay. That actually still does a ton of damage, but another one won't KO us, so that's good. I mean, you have to Tailwind here, right? Surely Tailwind and then knock out Dragapult. This is a problem. I don't have much offense in the back. Clefairy, it actually could be worth switching out Dragapult just to conserve. Because, like, I can protect Dragapult with Clefairy, which means I get 1 more attack off. I mean, I think you Tailwind target Dragapult here, so I actually think I want to switch out into Incineroar. And go for... I think Thunderbolt just to pick off the Whimsicott. Yeah. I think it would have been better, though, to just have Max Wormwinded Cinderace twice in this game. Indeedee is not really that much of a threat. It is going to have the Sash, but Expanding Force isn't going to pick up the knockouts, so I think that was a slight misplay. Yeah, I think I just need to give more respect to Cinderace, because, like, that's actually the biggest threat to my team. Nothing else. I mean, the other Pokemon do damage, right? But, like, Incineroar actually kind of just beats Whimsicott plus Indeedee by itself. Wow, they actually just went for another Knuckle onto... That is... Wow. They did not respect the Dragon Pole. That's kind of frustrating. I mean, maybe they read into the switch there, but had I just attacked there, we would probably just win the game off that. So I wonder if they read into the switch, or they were just like, yeah. I mean, I guess he had to read into the switch there. That's a really aggressive play on my opponent's end, but nicely done. Yeah, that was super, super well done. Okay. That actually puts us in a pretty bad spot now then, I think, because the Cinderace with Tailwind, like, now you can just click Expanding Force, High Jump Kick onto everything. And with Terrain up, I can't even Fake Out, so... I really didn't think it would go for another Knuckle. Actually, Dracovish is in the back, too, which I think seals up this game for my opponent, honestly. Okay, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Let's see. 2 turns of Terrain. Still at -1 attack. So I think, like, it's clear to switch Incineroar out into Clefairy here. And probably just launch a Hydro Pump into Cinderace. Yeah, that was a really aggressive read on my opponent's end. Nicely done. Nicely done. Maybe they were thinking Knockout Rotom, but it's like if I stay in with Dragapult there and I Wormwind, like I double up into Cinderace, then I think we're in really good shape. But I think they played this matchup really nicely, honestly. And I should have targeted Cinderace a little bit more aggressively, because that's obviously the main threat to me. I do think we brought the right Pokemon, but even with these Pokemon, it still feels kind of tricky. Okay, there's High Jump Kick into Rotom. We should survive that with Friend Guard. Yep. Let's see if they doubled up into it. They actually should have doubled up into it. That would be the correct play. But they don't, which is huge. Clefairy still faints there. Okay. And we miss Hydro Pump. That's going to seal it up then. I think if we connected, we maybe had a shot. But the miss means there's pretty much no chance now, I think. So, unfortunate, but given that Fish's Wren one-shot Clefairy anyway, that looks like choice banned, right? So I actually don't think we really had much of an out. They play to the setup Tailwind and get Dracovish, like, out in the late game win con really, really nicely. Even if I knocked out the Cinderace, I think Dracovish under Tailwind is actually really tough to go up against. I mean, I can get another Intimidate off here, but at this point, I think it's looking a little tough. I'm not sure the Hydro Pump was KOing Cinderace there anyway, so maybe it didn't even end up mattering. There's 2 turns of Tailwind left. I've got the Speed Boost in Rotom, but it doesn't really provide me much value. You have Sucker Punch as well. I'm just trying to think if there's any way to win this at this point. You're just going to Fish's Wren Incineroar and target Rotom, so I think we're pinned at this point. Yeah. I mean, I can switch out for Intimidate, I guess. But Rotom needed to get an attack off. I think Dracovish was going to sweep us anyway, though. Like, my opponent played the late game Dracovish setup really nicely. If you look at what I have, like, the way to deal with Dracovish is basically to beat it under max. So, great lead by my opponent as well. High Jump Kick comes out. I guess I could have switched Incineroar, Rotom out into Dragapult to get the, but the Cinderace wouldn't faint anyway. Yeah. Well done. I think the main play I regret in this game is not Wormwinding the Cinderace. And yeah, for them to read the Dragapult switch out, I thought was really, really impressive. So in that position, maybe I should have just gambled and stayed in, because I didn't, like, I was thinking to have, like, a late game Dragapult, because, like, Dragon Darts is really good against my opponent's team, but given that Whimsicott's going to get a Tailwind up in that position anyway, it's hard to actually stall out and get Dragapult in a good position, right? So, yeah. Nicely executed Hyper Offense from my opponent's end, and yeah, Whimsicott Cinderace is Cinderace is just so strong, and my opponent executed that really well as well. Part of the other problem is not knowing Cinderace's full moveset. Like, I didn't know if it had Steel Spike or not, so it's like, and I still don't know if it has Steel Spike or not, but not knowing that made it trickier, because if they don't have Steel Spike, I'd actually maybe just stay in with Clefairy, you know? and gone for like Protect Clefairy, Max Dragon turn 1, Max Wormwind into the Cinderace slot. So in order to beat the Dracovish in the late game, I actually need to protect my redirection users in Indeedee and Clefairy, and I didn't really consider the late game Dracovish super well. So that was like nicely done on my opponent to recognize that not only is Cinderace good, but if you set up Tailwind in the late game, you can really sweep through. So yeah, I don't know. I think like Cobalion can't really do very much for us in that matchup, unfortunately. Doesn't do enough damage and it gets dunked on by Max Cinderace. I don't think Indeedee honestly helps. I guess it gets all these strong expanding forces off, but like the one thing I could have seen me leading is Dragapult Indeedee and then just turn 1 like Max Airstream into expanding force to knock out the opposing Indeedee at least. And then I get a lot of damage off with expanding force as well, but I don't know. I still don't feel like that's really great because then Cinderace just Max Darknesses and that does so much damage. But I think we had the right tools to win, just needed to execute a little bit better. Anyway, that is going to be it for this one, so hopefully you guys enjoyed. As always, if you did, please share your support by leaving a like. Thank you as always for watching, and I will catch you guys next time. Alright, peace.